How's it going, everyone? My name's Omer, and this is That Mill Podcast YouTube channel. I hope everyone's doing well today. I thought, as a bit of fun, seeing as especially recently being the January transfer window, and obviously our bad turn of form at the moment under Gary Rowett, I thought it'd be a cool idea to do a tier list. Maybe a 2020 sort of thing, that is, to do a tier list. But with that said, I thought it'd be a good idea to present to you a tier list I made myself. It's got all the first team players on here, including some of the youth players. And I thought what would be cool is if we can rank them from top two, obviously being in case of there'll be a top two championship side, playoffs, players that would normally be in a playoff side, top half, average, and relegation. So I think it's kind of self-explanatory. I thought we'd make a good little talking point, and maybe you guys would want to do one yourself. So with that in mind, I've linked below to the description of this tier list I've made myself. Be sure to tag us on Twitter, send it back to us, reply to us. I think it's a kind of cool little thing we can do. I haven't got Kieftenbeld on here, who's actually been announced today as a new signing from Millwall, but I think probably the fairest thing to say is I don't really know much about Kieftenbeld. If anyone does, be sure to let us know what he's like in the comments below. But it'd be kind of unfair for us to judge a player that's not even played for the club just yet. So without further ado, we'll get straight into this. I think it's a good idea to kind of have a mix and match of players here. I've got the likes of George Alexander here, Tyler Bury, Tiencia. I just think it's a good little idea so that we can kind of give our opinions really and see what we really think is the real problem in our side. Players we need to get rid of, Deadwood, for example. I see about 4 or 5 in here already that I want to move into relegation category. But without further ado, we'll go with the goalkeepers first. So I think it's kind of obvious what I think about Bartosz Białkowski. If you're an avid listener of our podcast, I think he's a top draw goalkeeper. Is he the best goalkeeper in the league? That's the question you got to ask yourself. So I'm trying to think who else is there out there to compete with in the league. I do think there's a couple of goalkeepers better than him. I'm thinking of Tim Krul at Norwich City. I'm thinking of... I think Bryce Sanford, for example, at Nottingham Forest gets a lot of credit, which I don't think he deserves whatsoever, by the way. I think as goalkeepers go, he doesn't really cut it for me. I've seen him play a few times against us, but I think for me, when I look at Białkowski anyway, I see him as a playoff goalkeeper. By that I mean, he's one of the best 6 goalkeepers in the league. I wouldn't say he's the best, personally. Like I said, I'm thinking of Tim Krul. I'm thinking of O'Leary, even, for example, on Saturday at Bristol City, and Daniel Bentley. Both of them decent goalkeepers at Bristol City there. I think, no discredit to Bart Białkowski, one of our best players. But for me, I think he's a playoff standard goalkeeper at the moment in our division. I think for the rest of the goalkeepers, though, Ryan Sanford, I will go for first before I go to fielding. I don't think it's really fair to judge it on the kid, to be honest. I've seen him play a couple of times for the under-18s about 3 or 4 years ago now. He's been around for that long. I think he's about 20, 21 years old at the moment. And I remember him being that under-16 England player that everyone was raving about, thinking this is going to be the next big thing for us. I haven't really seen it from him. And I look at him and I think he's on the smaller side as well as for a goalkeeper. And I'm not saying height is essential for a goalkeeper, but I think to have that command and stature of his box, I've not really seen that from Ryan Sanford. But then again, I think it's unfair to judge him. But I have to be fair, I have to be honest, and I'll probably look at Ryan Sanford as he's not up to the championship level at the moment. So with that, relegation, I know that's going to be maybe harsh from me. I don't know what you guys think as a comparison for that, but I've not seen enough of him to say, he's a championship player. And with that, I think, for me, he's a relegation candidate at the moment on the tier list. The same goes for Frank Fielding. Now, Fielding has been around in the championship for a long while. Derby County, Bristol City. He fell out of favour at both sides. He left Derby, fell out of favour, went to Bristol City, fell out of favour. And what we've seen of him so far this year, in them 2 cup games albeit, again, maybe a bit unfair to judge him. He's had a good career, you could say. He was an England under-21 goalkeeper. I remember watching him play for the England under-21s. I think it was 2010 tournament now, many moons ago. And you think, okay, Frank Fielding looks decent, but I think he's just past it now, and I don't think he's gonna. I think he needs to step down to League One to maybe come back up to this tier list, so to speak. I'm not saying these players are never going to be an average or top half or even playoffs or top 2. I just think at the moment, based on current form, he's a player I would get rid of, a player I'd rather move on, and even maybe offer the opportunity to Sanford to be an understudy, a bit more to Białkowski, just because. I look at Fielding based on the couple of performances we've seen from him so far, and I have no faith in him personally, not going to lie. We'll move on to the defence. I will start with our central defenders. I will go straight for, seeing as he's first on this list, Mr. Jake Cooper. Now, Cooper, for me, is a playoff candidate centre-half. He gets a lot of credit, right? He's obviously a centre-half that, for us, is a valuable asset. Played a lot of games for us. I think he played 129 games in a row, or whatever the record was. And, he came back after dislocated shoulder after missing, I think, only 1 game. And played on at Birmingham after dislocating his shoulder in that same game. And you look at him and you think, he will definitely one day perhaps maybe step up to a Premier League side. For me, he's not quite the Jed Wallace equivalent, I would say, where Jed Wallace for me will move to the Premier League one day. I think, Jed Wallace has been out of form, and a lot of people might disagree with me there, maybe consider him being later down the list, but we'll get on to that in a bit. But with Cooper, I think he's a solid top 6 Championship central defender. He's reliable. The only thing you could probably criticise him for is his lack of ball skill, so to speak. So that would probably be why I think he would never really progress to a top 2 centre-half in the Championship, personally. I'm happy to be proven wrong. It's just my opinion. But for me, it's no discredit to say he's a playoff standard central defender. I'll move on to Sean Hutchinson, who I would have easily put here a couple seasons ago, and perhaps even last season as well. But I'm going to put him in top half based on his current form at the moment. I don't think we've seen the best of Sean Hutchinson this year. I don't know if it's maybe the run of games, playing Saturday, Tuesday, but I think he's kind of fallen off the boil a little bit for me. With that in mind, top half central defender, still no discredit to that. I think these two together make up a good playoff central defence. However, I think Cooper makes Hutchinson a better player, and I think Hutchinson makes Cooper a better player as well. So I think it's kind of been a mantle passing over. I feel like Hutchinson has, nurtured Cooper to come through, looked after him as a central defensive pairing. But I look at Hutchinson based on this season, and I just think he's dipped slightly. His form has dipped to an average or maybe just top half central defender for this league. Next up, we'll go for Murray Wallace, who I think he's just average for this level. He was obviously signed from Sanford United, a League One free sign-in for us at the time. Came in as a central defender, now playing left back. His limitations are obvious to see. Are similar to Cooper in a sense, not the greatest on the ball. But what you get from Murray Wallace, and I don't think this is a discredit to say it, is a 6 out of 10 every game, an average player. He's had one bad game in the distant memory, and that was obviously against Coventry City a couple of weeks ago, or was it Nottingham Forest? The games come thick and fast, but the one I'm on about where he got sent off towards the end of the game, it was Coventry City. But for me, an average central defender in this league, a player that I would keep around in our squad, a player that I wouldn't personally think he's a first choice if we can strengthen him in the left back and centre half area, but a solid, reliable centre half that we could always rely on, and a solid backup at that. Next up on our list, we'll go for Scott Malone. Scott Malone, I don't know, considering the background he's had, where he's played for Fulham, he's played for Huddersfield, I think he even played in the Premier League for Huddersfield at one point, you'd expect him to be a playoff or top half left back. I don't think he's either of them, to be honest. I think there's better players in the league when I'm comparing him to. I think he's an average left back. I do, for the Championship. And he's getting on in his career now, 30, 31. He's no longer the young player we signed from Bournemouth for £550,000, and obviously that Josh McCoy going the other way. He's not that player anymore where he was on the upward trajectory. I think he's on a downward climb a little bit, but he's still an average left back, a player that if I had the option to sign him for next season, I would personally. I think he would bolster our squad, again, be another solid option for the left back position. So he's an average left back. I don't think there's any criticism there to him. Danny McNamara, again, a hard one to actually give a review of Danny Mac. You look at him and you see, to me personally, I'd really consider him to be at this standard in playoffs for a Championship side. He's come in, and maybe that's because he's come in place of Romeo, who got a lot of criticism for his poor form. But I look at him and I see as a solid right back, comfortable on the ball. He's not the quickest, which maybe he might get found out for when he comes against a bit of a more experienced, quicker winger in this level. But I think it's fair to put him in top half. From what we've seen of him so far, I'm really expecting him to keep pushing up, and I'm hoping one day he'll be, a top right back in this division. So I think top half is fair for Danny Mac. Who else do we have on this list? Hayden Muller, another player I've not really seen much of. I wouldn't say though relegation like Sanford in that scenario. So you could compare him to Ryan Sanford. He's a young player, plays for the 23s like Sanford does. But we've seen him play for the first team. He played right back, which isn't his natural position, by the way. I've also seen him play in that Chelsea Youth Cup game, and he looks a solid player. Again, will he be able to play in the Championship? You don't know till you throw them in. But I think it'd be a discredit to Muller to put him in the relegation candidate. So I'm going to put him on average. So I'm sure I'll ruffle some feathers with this, but I'm sure a lot of people will agree with me that, he shows more promise than Ryan Sanford, but not quite as much promise as Danny McNamara. So by that logic, in between the two, I think it's a fair option there. Next up is Alex Pearce. I don't think he deserves to be in the same bracket as Fielding, right? He's offered a lot to the club. He's done a lot for us. He sees leadership. But another player, like I said, he's been up here. He's been playing in the Premier League before, even higher up. But he's on a downward decline in his career. He's in his early to late mid-30s, should I say. And with that, I think once Alex Pearce leaves the club, which I don't know if it will be this summer coming, But if he did, I don't think he would get a Championship gig. Maybe a Rotherham United, maybe. But again, with that saying, look where Rotherham are in the league table. So, Alex Pearce, no discredit to you. You're, I think, a top pro. Everyone can see that. You've offered a lot to the club captain at the moment. But, I just think he's a relegation fodder at the moment in that sense, because when he leaves Millwall, I think he'll be one of those players that steps down to League One. Just got to be honest with that one. Next up is Milo Romeo, a player that I think in recent weeks has come with a lot of criticism. Obviously, Danny McNamara has come in and kind of shown Romeo what he's worth. And in that sense, I think Romeo's only in an uphill battle at the moment. And I think he's under a lot of trouble to try and get his shirt back. I think Romeo's a Championship player. He is a player that I thought 2-3 years ago under Harris, when we finished in 8th place, that season we went like 19 games unbeaten, I thought he would push up a bit more. But I think you see his flaws. The good thing about Romeo is he's got the pace to get out of a lot of positions. And I think with that, he's a Championship player. I would put him in the same category as the likes of Wallace, Malone and Hayden Muller here, and say he's an average Championship player. Would be solid. If he left us, he'd go to another Championship club. I don't see him going upwards. I don't see him going downwards either. So I think Championship average is fair for Milo Romeo there. Next up, we'll go with Junior Tientia, who I haven't seen much of. So I don't think I can really comment on him, to be honest with you. I'm going to put him in relegation, but I really hope, with what I've heard about him, I think he will progress up, but he needs to play probably in the lower leagues, get experience and play some games. I'm going to do the same for the likes of George Alexander, by the way, because I haven't seen him play, and I don't think it's fair to say that at the moment, in this being time right now, they will come into the side and improve us, because I don't know that. I really don't. And from that, I've got to trust what the manager is thinking of him in Gary Rowett, and think he's probably not good enough to play for us at the moment. So relegation is the same for Tientia. I think that's all the defenders, is indeed. We'll step into the midfields, and we will start with, let's go central midfielders. Ryan Leonards. Now, if you asked me a year and a half ago, I think Leonard would be a League One player, so I'd struggle to keep him on average. Relegation would probably be more likely option for Ryan Leonards. Having said that, playing behind closed doors, playing under Gary Rowett, playing, being the versatile option in recent weeks, playing centre half, right back, midfield, behind the striker in the number 10 position at the little lockdown brief we had last season. He's a top half player, I'd say. I don't think I could see those midfielders better than him in the league. I think, if I compare him to the likes of, who am I thinking of? Let's say George Saville. I think George Saville's a better player than Ryan Leonard, personally. I think that's why Saville went for £7 million. I'd say Saville's a playoff kind of Championship standard player. I'd say Ryan Leonard's a top half player, which isn't no discredit. You need a whole squad of players that can offer you something. And Leonard, to be fair to him, has come on leaps and bounds, and he's going on an upward trajectory. So he could be a player that could sneak into a playoff sides in this little tier list at the moment. But I think top half is fair. And I don't think I'm discrediting him by saying, he's improved. I know he would have been, like I said, relegation or average for me in the past. Definitely a top half player at the moment for me. Next up, we'll go with Billy Mitchell. I'm going to put him average. I hope that Billy Mitchell comes in and comes into the playoff category. From what we've heard from Gary Rowett, from what people are saying about him, there's a lot of hope and expectation around him. We've seen him play right back, a couple of games in midfield. I like what I see with Billy Mitchell. He's a Millwall fan, but he's also got a bit of touch about him, a bit of class, and you can just see that he's really eager to make a name for himself. I think he would get into our side at the moment. I really do. Obviously, we've signed Kifton Bell now, so maybe that changes the dynamic. Will he get his opportunity to play? Maybe Leonard drops back into central defence. It could be an option for Billy Mitchell to come in and impress. He might even play right wing back, but I don't see that now that Danny McNamara has come back from his loan spell. I think average Championship player at the moment in our squad. I don't want to lose him. I wouldn't put him in relegation because I wouldn't want to loan him out either. Unless he's got players in the way of him, then maybe we would loan him out to a League One club to get some games next season. But I think at the moment, the jury's out still with Billy Mitchell, and I'll put him in the average category. Next up, I will go with... I was going to go Jerry Scalak there, but we'll save that one for a minute. I'll go with Ben Thompson. Again, a player that, you look at Ben Thompson, he's obviously gone to League One a couple of years ago and played for Portsmouth, came back to us and was playing like a top half playoff player, He was in our team grabbing the game by the scruff of the neck. I think Ben Thompson's an average Championship player. I think this is his level, to be honest with you. I think if he goes to Portsmouth, he'll be idolised there. And I am starting to think, especially over the last 2 games, we played Huddersfield, he grafted for us, got us a good win up there. I feel like he was kind of instrumental in that, and he kind of epitomised what the Millwall way of playing, which the manager also said after the game, Gary Rowett. But you saw him play Saturday, and you can see the flaws he's got in this league. I think he's a bit of a hothead sometimes, and I think personally, an average championship side would take up Ben Thompson. You would talk about Portsmouth, they aspire to be a championship side. So I think average is a fair level for Ben Thompson. A lot of this I am taking into consideration, like if they leave us, who would they go to? So maybe I'm generous with Muller here at the moment, but you know, I've not really seen enough of him. I think he's going to come into the Millwall setup soon. So with that in mind, whilst we're a championship club, I think he's an average championship player. The same with Billy Mitchell. So maybe I'm being generous to them too. And obviously Tienza has been here in Sanford. I'm being a bit harsh, but again, like I said, I think the jury's out on all the youth players, so it's kind of unfair to put them in this list, but I think they should be considered nonetheless. Sean Williams, an average championship player. Done it for 7-8 years at Millwall now. He's probably knocking on the door for a testimonial, and I think he still does a job for us. He's come in a couple of games now, Huddersfield Wednesday. He'll be back in the side tomorrow, I feel like, against Watford, and does a job. His flaws are obvious in the sense that he hasn't got that turn of pace. He never really had it in the first place, but, you know, he's obviously getting on a bit now. But I think, you know, he's a smart player of the game. Him and George Saville made a good partnership in that year because I think Saville had the free license to bomb on because he had Sean Williams sitting behind him and he had that assurance in his head that Sean Williams is behind me there. A smart reader of the game, intelligent man. I think he'll be a good coach for us. You never know. If Gary Rowett leaves sooner rather than later, he might get thrusted into the management job for a bit to look after it. I think, you know, you can tell that he's got a career in the game and he's obviously just a classy player. He really is. And I think the problem we've got now is that, you know, he can't play Saturday, Tuesday. And with that, it brings me on to Ryan Woods. Ryan Woods. I think if Mickey was doing this, who I do the podcast with, he'd stick him here. Relegation. He'd probably say he's the worst player on our side. I don't think that of Ryan Woods. Ryan Woods, if he left us, would get a championship gig. The question is if I put him top half, and I think I will put him top half. He's played for Brentford in the past. He's done it at this level, really high standard. You know, he's part of good teams. And I think the problem we've got, especially with Ryan Woods, sorry. I think of Mason Bennett. I think of Jed Wallace. I think of Mahoney. The problem we've got is the style of play we're playing. It's just a lot of these players are kind of getting shoehorned into positions, and I think Ryan Woods is a decent midfielder for the Championship. You know, Stoke paid I think 2-3 million for him from Brentford a few years ago, and you can see why. I think the problem we've got is we've not really seen the best of him just yet. The problem is he's been here for a year now, and you know the expectation is there, but he's playing in a struggling side. If he's full of confidence and playing well, it would be because of Ryan Woods, and I do think that. So with that, Woods goes top half on my tier list for the moment. Let's do the wingers next. We'll start with Mason Bennett. He's probably a forward. I'll tell you what, we'll do Tyler Bury. I'm going to put Tyler Bury in average. Again, I think he's a raw talent. From what we've seen of him, Boreham Wood in particular, you can see he's going to be a real option for us, especially when he's come on as a sub in a few games, you know, Middlesbrough away. I think his pace causes players trouble in the Championship. So he's got that little niche to him. Will he get his opportunity this season in front of Jed Wallace? Probably not. But, you know, I would have no hesitation to play him in the league game personally. And I think that is a credit to him. And I would say that's probably why he's an average player for us. I'm sure I'm going to ruffle some feathers with this, but, you know, it's all good fun. Jiri Scalak, I haven't touched him yet. Relegation. Should I put him at the front? Because, yeah, I'll leave him here. Standard. Jiri Scalak. If there was another tier here, I'd put him there. Just don't bother playing football anymore. I think he's a player that he played for Brighton, got a lot of plaudits. I think he got in one of the PFA awards or something when he got promoted, and he got a lot of assists for them. A lot of Brighton fans loved him when we first signed him and said, you know, he'd be a good player for us. He hasn't done it. Supposedly our highest paid player. You know, I think there's a lot of negatives about Jiri Scalak, and I'm being honest. I just think, you know, it doesn't cut out for us, and I'm not a fan of him. I really ain't. And I think a lot of be said about the fact that he's played 10 games from the start since he signed for us. He's injured half the time. Maybe just Mill's not a good fit for him, but I think he's a player that, you know, he's on the downward trend of his career, and he'd be lucky to get a gig in League One, to be honest, next season. Being generous. Colin Mahoney, I'm gonna say, I'm really flattered to see him, Mahoney. He's not a League One player. And the question is if he's a top half Championship player or an average player. I think from what we've seen of Mahoney, he's not done it enough for me to put him in the top half or playoffs. No chance. But I think top half could be an option. But reality is, I think Mahoney is an average Championship player at the moment. He's young enough to make an impression that he can bring that up. But we've seen him play, you know, 3 or 4 good games since he's signed for us last year. Excuse me for dropping my pen there. But he's not done it enough, especially when we need him to. You think of Jed Wallace. Jed Wallace steps over free kicks in big games when it's 0-0. He's there, takes the free kick, buries it. You know what I mean? So I think with that said, he's not gonna. I think if he left us, he would also go to another Championship side, a Birmingham City. You know, where he's played there in the past, an average Championship team. I think Mahoney being average, he would probably be closer if there's a middle tier between these two. Would be a top half, but I think for the moment, from what we've seen of him, average Championship player. Next up, we have that man Jed Wallace. I'm gonna put him top 2. There you go. Now, people are going to see that and think I'm bonkers, but Jed Wallace is Millwall's best player. No question whatsoever in my head about that. He is the reason, I think, last season we achieved what we did. 10 goals, 10 assists, one of the best attackers in the league last year. The problem we've got this year is he's not doing it. And what is the reason for that? Should I then therefore be dropping into playoffs or top half, perhaps? Maybe. But I think if I'm saying the same argument about where they go to if he left us, Jed Wallace wouldn't maybe step into a Premier League side. I'm thinking of Burnley. It was linked to Villa a year or so ago. I'm thinking, you know, if he left us, he could go into a Brentford. He could go into a Norwich City, I feel like. I do think Jed Wallace is a top 2 side Championship player. And we're lucky to have him at the club. I do think that he is going through a barren spell. He is going through a hard time at the moment where, you know, a lot is relied on him. And that's the problem we've got. You need players like Mahoney. You need players like Milo Romeo. You need players like Ryan Woods, Ryan Leonards. You need these players to progress to help the likes of Jed Wallace. Because people know, opposition especially, no, Jed Wallace is our best player. So if you single out on him, put him under pressure and make him out of the game, so to speak, no one else is going to win us the game. And that's the problem we've got. Jed Wallace is a top 2 Championship player. Final for me. Ferguson, I don't want to put you in relegation, Shane Ferguson, but if you left us, I could see him turning out for, I wouldn't go as far down to say League 2 Crawley side, but I could see Shane Ferguson signing for Kenny Jackets, Portsmouth, and even then not getting into their starting 11, being a squad player. I think Shane Ferguson's offered us well. He came in when we was in League One. Harris is one of his first signings that year, and you know, signed on loan. Then it was a permanent deal. He's reliable, but I don't see room for improvement for Ferguson. I think he's just on a kind of steady trend to go almost downwards, and I think he's a League One player at best, to be honest with you. We'll move on to the forward line, and this is where, like, you know, you got to ask yourself the question: what's going wrong at Millwall? Because we've got. I'll ignore Alexander. I'm just going to put George Alexander here in relegation. I have a lot of high hopes for him, but he's a League One, League Two, even Conference. Give him a season away somewhere. Let him play, make a name for himself. But moving on from Alexander, who I do hope one day does play in a Millwall team and plays well for us. But anyway, we've got 6 attackers here. 6 people that can play up front, lead the line, and we can't score goals. Where is the problem? What is going wrong? And you look at them individually, and I've done a podcast with Kai from Millfan TV over the weekend, and we both said, like, or especially him, like, these players individually are good players. What's wrong when they come into this collective? Is it the management? Is it the way we're lining up? There's more to it than what meets the eye, I feel like. We'll start with Mason Bennett. I'm going to say he's an average Championship player. He's not done it to a high standard enough in this league, but he is a actual, you know, he's a threat. When he's on the ball, I think of Saturday in the Cup, given the opportunity, he can run the ball, he can press high, his energy, he's raw, he's something different to the Millwall side that we don't really have. For me, he's an average Championship attacker. That's no discredit. Hopefully he can improve. Injuries prevent him from doing so. He had one good season at Derby under Frank Lampard where he played 30, 40 games, and even then he had a few injuries. So the key for Mason Bennett, and we all know it, is his injuries let him down. So hopefully with a bit of luck, he could come back into the side and, you know, push us up, hopefully, and become a top half player. But for the moment, I'd say he's an average Championship player. Tom Bradshaw, he signed a new deal. He's got, 3 goals this year? Signed for £1 million. He would be between relegation and average in the middle tier. The question you've got to ask yourself is, if he left us, who would he go to? And I think he'd go to a Rotherham, or, you know, maybe back to Barnsley, a side that's struggling in this league. So with that being said, I've got to be harsh and honest here. I think Bradshaw is a good League One player and just below average Championship player. He would be in the middle tier between these two, like I said, but he doesn't score goals. And you can see what he offers. He's quick, he's lively, Maybe if we played a bit more of an attacking style, he'd get more chances and hopefully score some goals. But again, it's similar to Lee Gregory, isn't it, in a sense? You know, Lee Gregory needed 4 or 5 chances a game to score a goal. The same goes to Tom Bradshaw. I think of especially the Bournemouth game, he had an opportunity to score a goal. He dragged it wide, through on goal. The same on Saturday, a couple of opportunities. But what you get with Bradshaw, which I don't think you get with the likes of Troy Parrott or Bodvarsson, is he'll make the opportunities for himself. So, you know, I rate him higher than John Daddy Bodvarsson. And I rate him higher than Troy Parrott. I don't think Troy Parrott is going to be a relegation fodder. Okay, I'm going back on my word here. Bradshaw, average. Parrott, average. I'm sure people will disagree with me completely here, but it's my opinion. I think it's a bit of fun. This is what makes it good. So hopefully you guys will do your own tier list. And like I said, please be sure to tweet us at @thatmillpod on Twitter. You know, Parrott is what Parrott is, really. You know, I think he's a young player. He's gone to Tottenham, got his good move from Ireland. He's looking to make a name for himself. I think any other club in the Championship but Millwall, he would score goals. I really do think that. And so I've got to be fair and say he's an average Championship player. I'm starting to think I've got too many in the average, but then maybe this is just a God's honest truth about Millwall. Like, you know, we've got a lot of high hopes for our team, but we've only got 5 or 6 really good players in this division. So maybe this kind of brings you the sense of realism that, you know, can we actually do it? Matthew Smith. Matty Smith. The problem with Matt Smith is, right, he hasn't got any pace and he can't get himself about. If you watch, probably, if you look at his distance covered in kilometres compared to other players in the pitch, I'm pretty sure he'd be at the bottom if he played 90 minutes. And that's not his fault, because he's not a player that should cover grass or cover yards. He should be sticking in the box, let service come to him, and he will score the goals. So I think the problem I've got, though, is with Matt Smith, is if he left us, he wouldn't probably get a job in the Championship, maybe a Rotherham side again. So then he'd probably be relegation. I'm being too generous to these players, because how can I put last season top goal scorer in relegation? How can I do that? Average. Okay, there you go. Matt Smith is an average Championship player. Disagree with me all you want. Last up is Ken Sahar, loan signing from West Brom. I'm going to plop him into top half. I'm tempted to do playoffs, but we've not seen enough of him in the Millwall shirt. If I base him on his previous at West Brom and Cardiff, I'm going to leave Ken Sahar playoffs. There you go. That's just my gut. I'm going to say it. That's it there. So, here's my tier list. Am I happy with it? Any changes I'll make to it going through it? No. Maybe I was a bit harsh to Sean Hutchinson. Maybe he's a playoff standard central defender. But I think here lies the problem that we have as Millwall fans, where, you know, we finished 8th place or 9th place last season. We almost snuck in the playoffs. I think we just had a golden opportunity last year, you know. I looked at it this year going into it and I thought, you know, can we kick on? Troy Parrott scored 3 goals in 3 pre-season games. We look like a good outfit. We look like a side that, you know, could maybe, just maybe, kick on. And the first 5-6 games, you know, we weren't great, but we got results. And then eventually we got found out and we just can't score goals. We really can't. And here lies the problem. You know, Bilkowski, playoff standard goalkeeper. Jake Cooper, playoff standard central defender. Sean Hutchinson, top half. McNamara, top half. Brian Leonards, Ryan Woods. You know, even to Milo Wallace, Scott Malone, you know, Milo Romeo, they're all at least average defenders and goalkeeper in this division. The problem lies is we haven't got enough players going forward. Bradshaw, Bennett, I'm being generous. I've been harsh to some players and you know, harsh on others, but let's be honest, Bradshaw's probably down here. You know, Troy Parrott's probably down here based on his current form. This is the reality of it. Like, you know, these players haven't done it enough for us. And let's be honest, let's be harsh, simple. I'm going to put Troy Parrott here because I know this will bite me in the backside if I put him relegation, because I know next season, Troy Parrott goes on loan to another Championship side, a Reading or someone along those lines, and scores 25 goals for them. And they get promoted to the Premier League. So I can't put Troy Parrott there. But let's be honest, I'm thinking especially Bradshaw. He hasn't done it for us. He signed a big money fee. Same with Leonard, but Leonard's kind of risen from it, you know what I mean? And he was kind of at first written off, but Leonard's come back to, you know, kick on. So, yeah, that's my final tier list. I'm probably going to change some more if I kept talking, but I'm happy with it as it stands. You can see the obvious